Welcome to FO Talks. With me is Ricardo Vanella, an international relations analyst and a strategist with more than 30 years of experience. He is joining us today from Argentina's capital, Buenos Aires, and today we will talk about the Falkland Islands. Now, Ricardo, first of all, welcome and thank you for speaking to Fair Observer.
Thank you very much for having me on Fair Observer. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you again. But before we even begin into the meat of the matter, can you tell our global audience what is the dispute over the Falkland Islands?
Let me say one thing at the beginning. I will refer to the islands as the Malvinas Islands, which is Argentina's historic and constitutional name for them. I understand that in the UK they are known as other name, but from an Argentine perspective, the correct name is Malvinas Islands. Okay, so if you don't mind, I will refer to them as the Malvinas Islands. That is Argentina. I mean, the Malvinas dispute is one of the longest standing sovereignty disputes in the international system worldwide. Argentina considers the islands an integral part of its national territory, occupied by the UK since the 19th century. The UK argues that sovereignty rests with Britain and emphasizes the wishes of the current islanders. So the core tension is clear. Argentina frames the issue in terms of territorial integrity, history, and decolonization, and the UK frames it in terms of British sovereignty and self-determination for the islanders. There was a war in 1982, which Argentina lost. But since the return of democracy, Argentina has consistently maintained that its claim must be pursued peacefully, diplomatically, and under international law. So this is not about war. This is about law, history, diplomacy, and an unresolved sovereignty dispute. That's it.
Right, and it's interesting how you brought up that the island is called Malvinas in Argentina, and I think that's just part of the British discourse that they've built everywhere. I'm interviewing you from India, where India was also colonized by the British for almost 200 years, and India has got a very beautiful country as a neighbor called Nepal, and Nepal has the world's tallest mountain, Mount Everest, and it's interesting because Everest was British, but the person who reached the top was not a British person; it was a Nepalese. And in India and Nepal, the mountain is called Sagarmatha. So yes, naming things is part of geopolitics, and we've seen that not just here with Falkland Islands. We see it with the South China Sea as well. We see it in other parts of the world where countries try and show their leverage by naming things. But the reason I'm bringing up Falkland Islands today, and the reason we're talking about Falkland Islands today, is because there's been a leaked Pentagon memo that suggests that the Trump administration should review its diplomatic support to the UK over the Falkland Islands. And the reason this report has come out is because Britain has refused to openly support the United States in the war against Iran. Now, given how disputed Falkland Islands are, Malvinas, as you say, there's been a war over them. How is Argentina seeing these reports that are coming out of Washington?
Well, from Argentina's perspective, any discussion in Washington about the Malvinas Islands is diplomatically relevant, of course, but we should be careful not to over-interpret it. A tactical debate within the US government is not the same thing as a formal recognition of Argentine sovereignty. That's very important to make the difference. Argentina values its relationship with the United States, and President Milei has made that relationship a central part of his foreign policy. So the responsible Argentina approach should be to engage Washington respectfully, explain Argentina's position with legal and historical clarity, and avoid unnecessary misunderstandings. This is not about creating tension with the US or with the UK. It is about reminding the international community that the Malvinas Island question remains unresolved and that Argentina seeks a peaceful and diplomatic solution. Argentina should not overread Washington's internal debate, but it should use every diplomatic opportunity to explain its case with seriousness, respect, and strategic patience, of course.
Ricardo, I want to prong you further on that, because in the Trump 2.0 administration, we are hearing about something called the Donroe Doctrine, where he wants to keep the Western Hemisphere under American influence. Now, yes, Argentina is in this hemisphere, so are the islands, and a big part of the Donroe Doctrine is that the United States doesn't want other powers like China, Russia, but even European powers like Spain, France, Italy, and the UK from expanding their influence here. So there is a high possibility that Donald Trump would like to pursue supporting Argentina over the UK when it comes to the islands. Now, given how close the relations are between President Javier Milei and President Donald Trump, do you think this is going to become a frequent talking point between them going forward?
Very good question. I mean, yes, the Malvinas could become a talking point, but again, I wouldn't overstate it. President Milei has built a strong ideological and personal relationship with President Trump, and that may give Argentina unusual access in Washington. But access is not the same as a policy change. The US has historically avoided taking a definitive position on sovereignty. It recognizes British administration in practice while acknowledging the dispute. So even under President Trump, a full reversal would be a major diplomatic move, to say the least. What President Milei can do, in my opinion, is leverage that relationship to ensure Argentina's case is heard at the highest level. But if Argentina takes this seriously, and I think it does, it must combine political access with a professional diplomatic strategy, legal arguments, regional support, United Nations formal channels, and confidence building measures. Personal chemistry helps, but it doesn't replace statecraft.
Right. Ricardo, when we started this conversation, you said that we're not at war right now. We've had a war, but let's not take the media reports to think that the relations between Argentina and the UK are deteriorating. There is a lot of room for dialogue. So, what options do you think Argentina has? Yes, there has been a war. Of course, it would be in nobody's interest to have another one. So, are there some diplomatic or maybe even non-diplomatic options that the Milei government would seriously consider when it comes to engaging directly with the UK? Perhaps there's a treaty, or the two countries sit together and have like a sharing concept. I don't know. What are some of the unconventional options do you think the Milei government can use here?
I think you're right. You're right on the point. The realistic options are overwhelmingly diplomatic. And again, I would call Argentina to. I mean, Argentina can push for renewed bilateral negotiation. It can strengthen its case at the United Nations. It can build support in Latin America and the global South, and it can engage main capitals to keep the issue alive. But Argentina has been doing this for the last century. So, as you said, I would add something else, if you don't mind. I mean,
Oh yes, please.
yeah, The formal positions of Argentina and the United Kingdom are very far apart. I would say the opposite. If both sides simply repeat their maximum positions, I believe this dispute may remain frozen for at least another century. So the real challenge is to create, in my opinion, a long-term South Atlantic agreement. There is a lesson to be learned from long-term transitional diplomacy, including cases in which the United Kingdom itself has negotiated complex territorial arrangements over time. I'm not saying I'm not saying that any case can be extrapolated or copied mechanically. Every case we know is different, but diplomacy sometimes requires imagination, patience, and very long horizons. My view is that Argentina and the United Kingdom should sit down and work on a shared vision, on a common vision for the South Atlantic. That could include British, for example, British investments in Patagonia and Tierra del Fuego, logistics, ports, energy, fisheries, science, Antarctica, connectivity, and trade. It could also include a stronger Argentine economic and commercial presence in London and through London to promote exports, attract investments, and build a more mature relationship with the United Kingdom. The islands could benefit from a more constructive relationship with the continent. Argentina could benefit from investments, jobs, exports, and development in the South Atlantic region. Such a framework would not require Argentina to renounce its sovereignty claim, and it would not require the United Kingdom to accept an immediate transfer of sovereignty. But it would create a long horizon, perhaps decades, to build trust, to reduce fears, and to create shared interests and make a future political solution more realistic. Of course, there is a very clear red line. Argentina should not consider military action. That would be disastrous, morally, strategically, and diplomatically. The 1982 war left deep scars. So when we speak about non-diplomatic options, we should not mean military options. That would be a disaster. We should mean building national power, economic credibility, maritime capacity, regional alliances, legal expertise, and international influence. In my view, Argentina should be firm on principle, but much more creative in method. That's the point. Much more creative in methodology. Otherwise, it's stuck.
Ricardo, from an outsider's perspective, when the islands are brought up and they're discussed, they're talked about in circles, what really confuses is the way they are considered by both Argentina and the UK. Now, Argentina says Britain is still acting like a colonial power. They took the islands in 1833, and they're still hanging on to it. And it's sovereign Argentine territory. On the other hand, you've got the UK who say they didn't act as a colonial power, they didn't colonize the people over there, they didn't extract resources from the islands. So they're making a case for why they should have it. They say they've administered it since 1833 and they should continue to do so. Now, One interesting aspect that happened in 2013 was there was a referendum in the islands where about 99% of the people voted to stay part of the United Kingdom. How does Argentina see this?
Well, you have just explained how opposite are the positions from Argentina and from the UK. And that's why there's no solution keeping that way. Many Argentines would indeed see the British presence in the Malvinas as a colonial legacy, as you said. But I would phrase the issue carefully. The most important point is that the international community has never treated the question as fully closed. That's important. Argentina receives broad diplomatic support, obviously, from Latin America. Regional organizations and many countries in the global south, to call it that way, have historically supported the call from Argentina and the United Kingdom to resume negotiations. But we should rather be precise. Some countries support Argentina's sovereignty claim explicitly. Others support the need for negotiations without necessarily adopting every element of Argentina's position. That distinction matters. Argentina's strongest support has traditionally come, as I said, from Latin American countries and from multilateral forums where the principle of decolonization remains important. But the challenge for Argentina is to convert symbolic support into effective diplomacy. And international declarations are very useful, but they are not enough. Argentina needs consistency, credibility, and a long-term policy that survives changes of government. The serious Argentine position should be firm but peaceful. No war, no adventurism, only diplomacy and statecraft. And let me add this. For Argentina, the Malvinas question is not simply a matter of nostalgia or nationalism, which is a piece, of course, but not only. It is a matter of history, law, identity, and diplomacy. Argentina must be firm in its sovereignty claim, but responsible in its methods. The only serious path is peaceful negotiation, international law, and long-term statecraft with creativity, with innovation. Argentina values its relationship with the United States, of course. Should use that relationship to explain its position more clearly, more respectfully. And Argentina should also maintain a mature dialogue with the United Kingdom. That's crucial. Even where there is a deep disagreement, Argentina has to keep the dialogue, a deep dialogue with the United Kingdom. My own view is that Argentina and the United Kingdom need to move from a purely confrontational logic to a long-term shared South Atlantic vision. This is a very, very good timing to do that. Not by renouncing principle, but by creating trust, investment, which strengthen trust, connectivity, and common interests over time. If the formal positions are too far apart, then Argentina and the UK should work on a long-term South Atlantic framework. Cooperation first, trust building over time, and a future political solution made more realistic by economic and diplomatic convergence. The Malvinas question remains unresolved, but any future solution must be peaceful, diplomatic, and consistent with international law.
Ricardo, before we wrap this up very quickly, you spoke about how Latin American countries support Argentina. Of course, before we started recording, I was telling you that I had been reading up on India's perspective, and India has always supported Argentina. In fact, Indian diplomats refer to the Falkland Islands as Malvinas Islands, as you rightfully told me. Now we've got these reports of the United States moving towards closer towards Argentina and withdrawing support from the UK. Now, given how the conditions are right now in the world, that we've got two major wars going on, the United Nations have completely failed. They've not been able to stop wars. It would be impossible for them to even solve problems like this, which relate to territory. So, do you think it's better to have engagement with these large institutions, large multilateral institutions, or do you think one of the ways is for Argentina to go through the United States, to go through its other allies, and at least convince the UK to come and sit at the table for discussions?
Well, I think that you evidently understand geopolitics and history, Rohan. And I think that there is a big club of countries, of big countries. And if you want to belong to that club, you have to sit down and be aligned to that club. And that's it. I mean, there's no secret on that. That's why I said Argentina should not overread Washington's internal debate. Of course, use every diplomatic opportunity, but not overread Washington's internal debate. Because in that big club, you are going to see that the club's president is the US, but very important members, I would say, in the infrastructure of that club, you find the United Kingdom as well. So I think that this alignment with the club, with the big club, is crucial. But trust is not declared, is built. So you have to behave during a certain time with coherence in order to be considered trustful, reliable, and serious. And I think that's the opportunity that Argentina has right now. I would say I pray God that Argentina does that path. And I think that we have to sit down with under the auspices, could be under the auspices of the United States. I wouldn't forget the United Nations. By the way, one of the candidates for Secretary General of the United Nations is from Argentina. So that could be a good thing for Argentina to have a new opportunity to discuss this further. But I would sit down with the UK, knowing that the United Kingdom itself has experienced negotiated complex territorial arrangements over time in his long history. So Argentina can sit down with UK and work on a shared vision for the South Atlantic. I think that could be interesting, because when you are so distant in vision, you cannot do anything. It's frozen for another century at least. But if you have a common vision, and that's That's a very basic principle of interoperability. When you don't have a common vision, you cannot operate together. You cannot. But if you have a common vision, a very basic common vision of the South Atlantic, that could be a very solid base in order to talk seriously about a solution, which is not requiring Argentina, neither the UK to renounce to anything. But that could be a serious base and a peaceful base to build something concrete and beneficial for both sides.
Brilliant. Ricardo, it was a pleasure having you again at Fair Observer. Thank you for speaking to us about the dispute over the Falkland Islands or the Malvinas Islands. Thank you.
Thank you again for and to Fair Observer for the invitation. It's a pleasure for me.
Join the conversation at Fair Observer and subscribe to our YouTube channel.